The stars of the Zarelith Confederation burned quietly in the vastness of space. Worlds shone like scattered jewels, each one full of life and history. For centuries, the Confederation had lived in peace. It was not a perfect peace, but it was stable. Trade ships moved between systems, councils debated endlessly about taxes and territory, and science pushed forward. Many races worked together, small and large, scaled and furred, winged and walking, united under the dream that war was behind them. But peace never lasted forever. The danger came from beyond the edges of known space. At first, it was whispers. Merchant vessels reported strange shadows trailing them near dead systems. Then colonies went silent. When patrol ships arrived, they found planets stripped clean, oceans drained, cities reduced to ash, every living thing devoured. They had a name now for the threat, the Velcro Swarm. The swarm did not speak. It did not send diplomats or demand tribute. It did not care for borders, laws, or culture. It was pure hunger, an endless tide of biomechanical ships and creatures that consumed everything in their path. Worlds that had taken millennia to grow were eaten in days. The Confederation fought back, of course. Fleets of shining cruisers and advanced warships gathered to defend the border worlds. At first, commanders were confident. They had technology, numbers, experience, but the Velcro adapted. Every time the Confederation changed tactics, the swarm changed faster. Weapons that worked once failed the next battle, and always more and more of the tide came. In less than a decade, the Confederation lost 67 colonies. Now the enemy was moving toward the central worlds. Panic spread across the council chambers. Entire species feared extinction. For the first time in generations, the Confederation admitted one truth: they could not win alone. In the great chamber of Zarelith Prime, the ruling council gathered. The chamber was a ring of stone and steel, its ceiling open to the sky so that stars were visible even at night. Around the table sat the leaders of 12 major species, each one desperate. High Chancellor Relvar, a tall insectoid being with crystalline wings, stood at the center. His voice clicked as he spoke. "We have sent envoys to every neighbor," he said. "The Othari Empire refuses to risk their fleets. The Kuten hierarchy has locked their borders. Even the neutral Vela merchants have abandoned our space. No one will help us." A heavy silence followed. Councillor Tariq of the Ulak, a massive scaled creature with golden eyes, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "So we die? Is that our plan? Wait for the swarm to devour our worlds while others watch?" Relvar's wings shivered. "There is one option left." The council leaned in. Relvar looked up at the stars through the open roof. His wings hummed softly like a prayer. "We can send a call, a signal into the void, a plea for help, beyond known space, beyond the maps. If no one here will stand with us, perhaps someone, somewhere will hear." The room erupted. "Madness!" shouted Councillor Vayara, a feathered being with 3 eyes. "Who would hear? The void is empty. You would waste our last strength on superstition." But others murmured with grim agreement. Desperation left little pride. At last, after hours of argument, the decision was made. The Confederation would send a message not to allies, not to neighbors, but to the galaxy itself. A cry of desperation. On a lonely station orbiting Zarelith Prime, the most powerful transmitter ever built came alive. Energy poured into it, brighter than the sun. A coded message repeated endlessly, pulsing across the void of space. It carried the voice of Relvar himself. "This is the Zarelith Confederation. We face extinction by the Velcro Swarm. To any who hear, we beg for aid. Our fleets are failing. Our worlds are burning. We will give all we have, all that we are, to any who stand with us. Please do not let us die alone." The signal echoed outward across thousands of light years. It was sent on every known frequency, in every language they had, and even in bursts of simple mathematics that any intelligent mind might understand. Then, there was nothing to do but wait. Weeks passed. The council met every day hoping for an answer. At first, excitement was high. Surely one of the great empires beyond the Confederation would respond. Surely someone would act when they heard of the swarm. But silence followed. The Othari did not respond. The Kutin remained locked behind their borders. The ancient empires beyond the rim gave no sign of hearing. The Confederation grew more fearful each day. The Velcra advanced another system, then another. The desperate call had gone unheard. Many began to curse Relvar's plan, until one morning when the transmitter station detected a signal. At first, the technicians thought it was a mistake. The signal was weak, distorted, wrapped in strange codes. It did not match any known empire. But as they worked, the pattern became clear. Someone was answering. In the council chamber, silence fell as the message was played. A voice spoke, rough and strange compared to the flowing tones of most alien tongues. It was deep but carried an edge of steel. "This is Earth, this is humanity, we received your message." The counselors leaned forward, wide-eyed. No one had heard of this world before. The voice continued, "We are not a great empire. We do not have fleets of 1,000 ships. But we know what it means to fight extinction. We know what it means to face impossible odds. If you call for help, we will come." The chamber filled with shocked whispers. "Who are they?" hissed Counselor Vayara. "Humans. I have never heard of this species." Relvar's wings trembled. He had studied star charts for years, and the name was unfamiliar even to him. A minor race, perhaps. A young one. Yet the voice had been calm, steady. Tariq's golden eyes narrowed. "They are fools. Do they not understand the Velcra? A single small species cannot stand against them." But Relvar felt something stir. Hope. "They answered," he said softly. "When no one else did, they answered." The days that followed were filled with argument. Some counselors demanded the Confederation reject the humans. They might be weak. They might be opportunists, looking to steal technology while pretending to help. Why trust strangers from the void? Others argued the opposite. The Confederation had begged, and someone had answered. Could they afford to turn away even the smallest ally? In the end, desperation made the choice. The Council agreed to meet these humans. A delegation would be sent to the edge of Confederation space, where human ships promised to arrive. For weeks, scouts watched the border. Finally, one quiet night, they saw it. Ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. The aliens gasped. The vessels were not like the shining cruisers of the Confederation, nor the organic horrors of the swarm. They were rough, angular, scarred by age. Some looked patched together from older designs. Yet they flew in tight formation, like predators moving as one. The humans had come. On the bridge of the lead ship, the human commander stood tall. His name was Captain Elias Grant, a man with lines of age on his face and sharp eyes that missed nothing. He stared at the alien delegation on the view screen, waiting for them to speak. High Chancellor Relvar's wings glimmered faintly in the light. His voice trembled, but he forced it steady. "You heard our call," he said. "You came." Grant's lips curved in a grim smile. "You asked for help. Humanity doesn't ignore that." The counselors behind Relvar exchanged uncertain looks. These humans were smaller than most Confederation races, with soft skin, no claws, no armor. Yet their eyes burned with something fierce. Relvar spoke again, softly. "The swarm is unlike anything you've faced." Grant nodded slowly. "Maybe. But extinction? We've faced that. And we survived." For the first time in many years, the Confederation felt something other than despair. Not safety, not certainty, but hope. They had called into the void. The meeting between the Zarelith Confederation and the humans took place aboard a neutral station on the edge of known space. The station itself had been built long ago as a trading hub, but now most of its market stood empty. War had driven merchants away, leaving only silence and dust. It was here that the Confederation's delegation waited, their ships glittering in orbit, their banners displayed in defiance of despair. The aliens were nervous. They had seen the human ships arrive. Rough, angular, scarred vessels that looked more like tools than symbols of power. To many counselors, this alliance already felt like a mistake, but they had no choice. High, Chancellor Relvar stood at the head of the delegation. His crystalline wings caught the light of the station's lamps, shimmering faintly. Around him stood Counselor Tariq of the scaled Ulok, Counselor Vayara of the feathered Kesh, and a dozen other representatives. Their expressions were uneasy, eyes shifting toward the airlock where the humans would enter. "They are late," Vayara hissed softly, her feathers twitching. "Perhaps they are cowards, or perhaps they mock us." Tariq growled low in his throat. "They will come. I smelled fire in their words. They are not cowards." Before more could be said, the airlock cycled open, a hiss of pressure, the groan of heavy metal doors, and then the humans stepped through. The aliens stared. There were 5 of them, dressed in uniforms of dark blue and gray. They were smaller than most Confederation species, standing on 2 legs, with smooth skin and expressive faces. No claws, no wings, no armored plates. By the standards of many worlds, they looked fragile. And yet, they moved with confidence. At their head walked Captain Elias Grant, his face lined but steady, eyes sharp as blades. Behind him came 2 men and 2 women, each carrying themselves like soldiers, their gazes sweeping the station with practiced caution. The silence stretched. Then Grant raised a hand in a human gesture of greeting. "High Chancellor Relvar," he said, his voice calm. "We are honored to meet you." Relvar tilted his head, wings fluttering nervously. "And we are honored you answered." The 2 groups moved to the central chamber of the station, where a long table had been prepared. Translators hummed softly, converting words into tones and clicks each side could understand. The talks began. Relvar spread his wings wide, a sign of respect. "You know of our plight. The Velcro swarm advances faster than we can resist. We have lost many worlds. Soon they will reach our heart systems. Without aid, we are finished." Captain Grant leaned forward, his hands folded on the table. "We studied your reports on the swarm. They're worse than anything we've faced." His eyes hardened. "But not impossible." Vayara's feathers bristled. "Not impossible? You speak as if extinction is a puzzle to be solved. Our fleets are shattered. What makes you believe your small species can do what we cannot?" Grant's lips curved into a thin smile. "Because we don't think like you do." The counselors frowned. One of the human officers, a woman named Commander Reyes, spoke next. "Your reports show you fight the swarm with the same formations, the same strategies, every time. You treat them like another empire, an enemy with rules. But the swarm doesn't care about rules. They adapt. So must we." Tariq growled approvingly, his golden eyes fixed on the humans. "And how would you fight them, small ones? What weapon do you have that we do not?" Grant's voice was calm, but his words carried weight. "We fight with desperation, with creativity, with the knowledge that survival has always been against the odds." The aliens did not understand at first, so the humans explained. They told stories of their own history, wars that had scarred Earth, plagues that had killed millions, disasters that had nearly ended their species. They spoke of times when everything seemed lost, when survival depended not on strength but on cunning and willpower. Reyes described how humanity had fought wars with weapons far weaker than their enemies, yet won through strategy and trickery. Another officer spoke of disasters where humans survived by adapting faster than nature itself. The aliens listened in silence. To them, history was a record of progress, of stability. They had forgotten what it meant to face true extinction. But the humans carried that memory in their bones. At last, Relvar whispered, "You speak as if death itself is familiar to you." Grant met his gaze. "It is." The talk stretched on for hours. The Confederation delegation pressed for numbers. For ships, for weapons. The answers shocked them. The human fleet was small compared to the grand armadas of the Confederation, only a few dozen warships, many old and patched together. Their weapons were not the most advanced. Plasma cannons, railguns, and nuclear warheads, nothing the Confederation had not seen before. But the humans insisted that numbers and technology were not the deciding factor. Strategy, adaptation, and will would matter more. Veyara scoffed. You speak with pride, but your fleet is nothing compared to ours, and ours failed. Why should we believe you can succeed where we fell? Grant's smile was cold. Because we don't fear losing. We expect it. We fight anyway. That's the difference. When the talks ended, the delegation returned to their ships, troubled. Tarek walked beside Relvar, his scaled bulk heavy with thought. They are strange, these humans. Weak bodies, small fleets, yet they speak as warriors. Relvar's wings trembled. I do not know if they can save us, but I know this. They are the only ones who came. That means something. Veyara hissed, her feathers puffed in disdain. Or it means they are reckless fools dragging us into deeper ruin. Relvar said nothing, but in his heart he felt a spark of hope he could not ignore. The following days brought more contact. Human engineers met Confederation scientists, comparing technology. At first, the aliens were amused. Human ships looked crude, built with practicality instead of elegance. But when they studied the systems closely, their amusement faded. The humans had designed everything for function, not beauty. Their ships were ugly, but every piece had purpose. Every system could be repaired quickly, even in the middle of battle. Redundancies were everywhere, as if the humans expected constant damage and planned for it. They build for survival, one Zarelith engineer whispered, not for pride. Meanwhile, human soldiers trained beside Confederation troops. The aliens towered over the humans, their bodies stronger, their weapons more advanced. At first, they laughed at the small, soft-skinned warriors. But the laughter ended quickly. Human soldiers moved with speed and precision. They fought as if every drill were real, as if failure meant death. They took risks others would never consider, turning weakness into strength. In one exercise, a squad of humans overwhelmed twice their number of alien troops through sheer coordination and daring. They are frightening, one alien whispered after the match. Not because they are strong, but because they never stop. Despite these displays, doubts remained. The Confederation had seen too much loss to believe easily. Yet when the swarm struck, again, this time at the colony world of Herek, the humans made their first move. The alien fleets prepared to fight in their usual formations, bracing for another slaughter. But the humans stopped them. Let us lead, Captain Grant said firmly. And so the Confederation watched as the human fleet moved out, small battered ships against a tide of nightmare creatures. The aliens expected disaster, but instead, they saw something different. For the first time, the Confederation glimpsed the truth. These humans were not saviors of legend, nor gods of war. They were survivors. Mad, stubborn, clever survivors. And that might be what the galaxy needed most. The world of Herek was a jewel of the Confederation. Green fields stretched across continents, oceans shimmered like liquid crystal, and tall cities of glass reached for the sky. It had been peaceful for centuries, but now it was a battlefield. From the orbiting defense station, Chancellor Relvar and his delegation watched the skies darken. The Velcro swarm had arrived. The alien ships were not ships at all, but monstrous creatures of metal and flesh. Their hulls pulsed as if alive, covered with shifting armor that glowed with strange heat. Thousands of them swarmed in from the blackness, moving like a single organism. They come again, whispered Counselor Veyara, her feathers trembling. Herek will fall as the others did. Tarek's golden eyes narrowed. Unless the humans prove their madness has meaning. The Confederation fleet formed ranks above the planet, shining cruisers locking into defensive lines, But this time the human ships moved first. Grant's voice echoed through the combined fleet channels. Confederation vessels, hold your lines. We'll draw them in. Follow our signals, not your instincts. Relvar tilted his head, wings clicking, in disbelief. Draw them in? That is suicide. But the humans were already moving. Their ships cut forward, not in neat, predictable formations, but scattered, weaving patterns that seemed almost chaotic. They released small pods that drifted silently into the void. At first, the aliens thought these were escape craft. Then they saw the pods unfold, releasing clouds of reflective debris and heat signals. Dozens of false targets lit up across the battlefield. The swarm turned toward the decoys, distracted. The human ships fired next, not massive beams like Confederation cruisers, but volleys of old-fashioned nuclear warheads. Bright suns blossomed in space. The aliens gasped. Such primitive weapons were considered obsolete. But the swarm faltered. The blast didn't just burn. They scrambled their adaptive senses, filling the void with radiation and noise. Impossible, Vayara whispered. They blind the swarm with fire. Then came the trap. While the swarm turned toward the decoys, the real human ships slipped behind. Their railguns opened fire, launching dense slugs at near light speeds. The projectiles punched through swarm carapaces, tearing beasts apart before they could adapt. At the same time, humans detonated more warheads inside the debris fields. The shockwaves slammed into the enemy, scattering them into disarray. The aliens on the station watched in stunned silence as the Velcro formations broke. For the first time, the tide stumbled. But the swarm was not finished. A massive queen beast surged forward, its body bristling with weapon limbs. Energy blasts ripped through one of the human frigates, tearing it in half. The humans did not retreat. Instead, the crippled ship turned, engines flaring bright. It's going to ram. Tarek growled, eyes wide. The human vessel slammed into the queen beast, its reactor going critical. The explosion lit the void, tearing the monster apart. The aliens gasped in horror, but the human comm channels were calm. Frigate Echo 7 down. Objective achieved. As if sacrifice was nothing unusual. The swarm began to retreat. Slowly at first, then faster. The tide broke away from Herrick's skies. Never before had they abandoned a feast. Never before had the Confederation seen them, pushed back. When the last of the monsters vanished into the black, the battlefield fell silent. On the station, Relvar's wings shivered. He had no words. Vayara's feathers hung limp. They won. Tarek rumbled low, almost in awe. Not won, survived. That is different, but it is enough. Later, the human and alien commanders gathered in the station's hall. The Confederation. Delegations still looked shaken, unable to believe what they had witnessed. Relvar faced Captain Grant. You turned the tide. No fleet of ours has done such a thing. How? Grant's expression was steady. Because we don't fight fair. The swarm expects you to follow patterns. They expect strength and order. We give them chaos instead. And chaos is something we understand well. Reyes added quietly. They adapt to weapons, not to minds. That's where we strike. Vayara stepped forward, feathers flaring with unease. But your losses, 2 ships destroyed, many more damaged. You sacrifice yourselves as if lives are nothing. Grant's gaze hardened. Lives are everything. That's why we risk them. The alien counselors fell silent. None of them could answer that. Word of Herrick's defense spread quickly across the Confederation. For the first time in years, citizens cheered instead of wept. The swarm could be stopped. Not destroyed, not yet, but resisted. Yet with hope came fear. Whispers filled council chambers. What kind of species throws itself into death so easily? What kind of people call sacrifice victory? Some began to fear humanity almost as much as the swarm. In the quiet of the human flagship, Captain Grant studied star charts with his officers. The swarm will return, Reyes said grimly. Stronger. They'll adapt to nukes, to debris tricks, to everything we use today. Grant nodded slowly. Then we'll adapt faster. That's how we win. Not with bigger fleets, with sharper minds. He looked out at the stars, his eyes cold but determined. The Confederation called for help. They expected saviors. But that's not what we are. We're survivors. And survival is enough. The galaxy had seen the swarm unstoppable. Now, for the first time, it had seen them bleed. The victories at Harek had brought hope, but hope came with a cost. Humanity's ships were battered, crews exhausted, and the Confederation's leadership struggled to understand the strange way humans fought. They did not guard their lives as carefully as the aliens. They took risks that seemed insane, and sometimes they paid for it with death. On the orbital command station above Harek, Chancellor Relvar watched as the human fleet prepared for another strike. Ships with scorch marks and patched hulls lined up for departure. Crew members moved with quiet efficiency, repairing damage while preparing for battle again. Tarek, the Ulak counselor, growled low. Do they not fear death? Every move they make risks their lives. Relvar shook his head, wings clicking softly. They fear it, but they do not let it stop them. That is something we cannot understand, but it is also why they survive. Veyara's feathers bristled. And why so many die? I have seen their losses. These humans throw themselves into impossible situations. Their fleet is smaller than ours. How can they sustain this? Relvar said nothing. Meanwhile, on the human flagship, Captain Elias Grant and Commander Reyes were reviewing battle reports. Every victory came at a price. Harek had been saved, but several ships had been destroyed outright. Scores of crewmen would never return to Earth or any world. But Grant did not dwell on it. Humanity had long since learned that sacrifice was part of survival. Reyes sighed as she studied the casualty reports. This is getting worse. The swarm adapts faster than we can predict. Every time we win, they learn something, and we lose more of our fleet. Grant nodded. That's the price. But we cannot stop. If we hesitate, they will take another world. Another million lives. The human soldiers accepted the cost without complaint. They worked, repaired, and trained. Some had lost friends in the past battles, yet they did not falter. Their grief was quiet, private, but it did not stop them from fighting again. The Confederation began to see it firsthand during the next engagement. A human detachment was sent to defend a mining world near the swarm's path. The Confederation's alien commanders had suggested a cautious approach, forming defensive lines and waiting for reinforcements. But the humans had another idea. They deployed small strike teams directly into the swarm's path, using old ships as bait while others slipped past to attack critical targets. When a small human frigate was hit, the crew did not abandon ship. They counterattacked until the vessel was a wreck, then evacuated in shuttles to fight another day. The aliens watched, in shock. How can they survive such reckless moves? Counselor Veyara demanded. They will be destroyed. They survive because they expect nothing else, Relvar said quietly. To them, death is a tool, not a curse. That night after the battle, a human commander gathered the surviving crew. They were tired, some grieving, some wounded. But the mood was not despair. Grant stood before them. Today we lost some of our own. That is the truth. But we saved thousands of others. The Confederation's people live because of you. That is why we fight. That is why we survive. A young sailor, barely 20, raised her voice. Sir, I don't want to die. Grant's eyes softened. None of us do. But if you are willing to fight, to risk everything for those who cannot protect themselves, then you are part of something larger than yourself. That is what makes us strong. That is what makes us human. The crew nodded silently, understanding the weight of his words. But not all Confederation observers approved. Some counselors worried that the humans were dangerous, not only to the swarm but to the Confederation itself. Their willingness to sacrifice everything, their disregard for rules or standard tactics seemed almost chaotic. What if we lose control? Veyara whispered to Relvar. They are strong in ways we cannot measure. What if their methods endanger our people instead of protecting them? Relvar closed his eyes, thinking. Perhaps, but they are the only ones standing between us and annihilation. We must trust them, even if we do not understand them. Tariq's claws drummed on the table. Trust? We do not have the luxury of trust. We have only the certainty that the humans fight differently, and that difference keeps the swarm from eating more worlds. Weeks turned into months. Battles came faster, losses heavier. Confederation worlds were evacuated, entire fleets shattered. Each time the humans adapted, finding ways to strike at the heart of the swarm, to break their patterns, to survive impossible situations. During one engagement, a massive swarm hive descended on the planet Kralis. Alien commanders prepared for another slaughter. But humans executed a daring plan. They flew through the hive's defenses, dropping nuclear warheads and EMP devices directly into the Queen's main ship. One of their own vessels, badly damaged, rammed the hive core, detonating it from the inside. The Confederation officers could only watch in awe and horror. They are insane, Veyara said. But it worked. Relvar nodded. Yes, but at what cost? The human ship was gone, every crew member lost. Yet the swarm's advance was halted. Humanity had paid in full, but the galaxy lived another day. The human willingness to sacrifice led to strange alliances and uneasy respect. Alien soldiers who had mocked them now followed human orders, even if reluctantly. Young soldiers learned from their tactics, and slowly, alien engineers began adopting human designs, practical, repairable, and ruthless in their efficiency. The Confederation began to see that humanity was not just strong, they were something else entirely. Resilient, adaptive, fearless, and terrifying in ways the aliens could not imagine. Yet the cost weighed heavily, on all sides. Cities were lost, entire fleets destroyed. Human and alien alike mourned the fallen. On Herrick, survivors set up memorials for the dead. Humans did not pretend loss was easy. They named each lost crew member, told stories of their courage, and moved forward. A young alien pilot approached Captain Grant, his eyes wide. I do not understand. How can you keep fighting when your losses are so high? Grant looked at him, expression serious. Because if we stop, everyone dies. We are not here to be safe, we are here to survive, and survival is never free. The alien shook his head. It is madness. Grant smiled faintly. Maybe. But it works. As the months passed, the Velcro grew more cautious. They had faced humans now, and the swarm's adaptations slowed. They no longer charged blindly into battles, but humans adjusted faster, always thinking several steps ahead. The Confederation began to rely more heavily on human strategy than their own ships. Battles were fought under human guidance, often with small human fleets leading the way. The Miyam aliens could not understand why this worked, but it did. Relvar realized something chilling. The humans were not merely participants in the war, they were the key. Without them, the Confederation would already be ashes. And yet, humanity's methods came with a moral weight the aliens could barely comprehend. Commanders routinely made choices that no other species would dare, sacrificing vessels and crews to achieve a greater goal. To humans it was pragmatic. To aliens, it was horrifying. Counselor Veyara spoke privately to Relvar one evening. Do you not fear what they are capable of? They bend rules, risk lives, do things no other race would. I cannot decide if we owe them our survival or fear them more than the swarm. Relvar looked at the stars. Perhaps we owe them both. Even so, the Confederation began to change. Their fleets grew stronger under human guidance. Alien engineers adopted human efficiency, and soldiers learned to fight with flexibility rather than rigid formations. Humanity's presence reshaped the Confederation from within, for better and worse. But every success came with a reminder. The cost of war was steep, and humanity was willing to pay it, again and again. In the quiet moments, Captain Grant walked among his crew, speaking to them individually. He did not promise survival. He did not promise glory. He only reminded them of the truth. Every choice we make will cost lives. We cannot stop the swarm alone. But if we fight together, with courage and cunning, we can save billions. That is why we endure. That is why we fight. And the crew nodded, silently accepting what humans had always known. Survival was never free. The galaxy watched in awe and fear as humans continued their campaign. Alien fleets learned, but humanity led. Confederation worlds cheered, but trembled. Every victory carried a shadow. Every tactic came with a price. The Velcro swarm had learned much. Their hive fleets moved with terrifying coordination, striking faster, adapting to human strategies, and consuming Confederation worlds with relentless precision. The final battle loomed. The swarm had set course for the Confederation's capital system, the heart of their civilization, where millions of lives and untold history awaited extinction. Every available fleet gathered. Alien commanders moved ships into formations that had once seemed unbeatable. They deployed massive defensive arrays and planetary shields, yet none could hide the fear in their eyes. They had fought bravely, but the swarm had adapted too quickly. Many whispered privately that no victory seemed possible. Only one species did not tremble: humanity. Captain Elias Grant stood on the bridge of the USS Resolute, his eyes scanning the starfield ahead. Ships from dozens of worlds were assembled. Under his guidance, alien vessels forming protective screens around human-led strike groups. Every human ship was scarred and battered from previous battles. Some crews were fresh, many still recovering from losses. And yet, the humans were calm. Commander Reyes came to stand beside him. "They've learned our tactics. They won't fall for decoys this time." Grant nodded slowly. "Then we'll give them something else. They will not expect madness." Reyes frowned. "What kind of madness?" Grant's eyes glimmered. "The kind that only humans can do." The plan was daring, insane even by human standards. Humanity intended to turn entire moons into weapons, moons from outer systems, stripped and rigged with massive kinetic charges, would be launched toward the swarm's hive fleet. It was dangerous. The Confederation warned that miscalculations could destroy friendly planets. Yet Grant remained resolute. "Our people are strong," he said to the assembled alien commanders. "Not because of ships or weapons, but because we think beyond fear. Today we will do what must be done or die trying." Relvar watched the humans prepare, wings trembling. "They are willing to risk everything for us." "Yes," said Tariq. "But is that bravery or madness?" Vayara did not answer. She only stared. The battle began with a deafening silence. Space erupted into fire and chaos as the swarm descended. Their queen ships led the charge, monstrous and almost impossible to destroy. Thousands of biomechanical fighters swarmed around them like a living storm. The alien fleets fired everything they had, but the swarm pressed forward, adapting to each tactic almost instantly. The humans acted differently. Small strike groups darted between enemy ships, firing volleys of nuclear warheads and railgun slugs, dodging attacks with uncanny precision. They were not fighting to hold ground. They were fighting to destroy opportunity, to strike at the heart of the swarm where it hurt the most. Then, the moons launched. Massive rocks, stripped of their natural cores and packed with explosives, rocketed toward the swarm. The alien commanders held their breath, expecting catastrophe. The human calculations had to be perfect. And yet, the moons fell precisely into their targets, tearing through the swarm like meteors of death. Queen ships exploded, hives collapsed, and tens of thousands of swarm fighters were annihilated in seconds. But the victory came with sacrifice. One of the moons had misaligned slightly. A human ship, the USS Vanguard, raced forward to correct its trajectory. Captain Elias Grant watched as it collided with the moon's surface, detonating both ship and moon. The explosion was blinding. Hundreds of crew members were lost instantly. Relvar's wings shivered. They throw themselves into death without hesitation. Tarek rumbled. And yet, it works. Only humans could pull this off. The swarm rallied for one final push, desperate and vicious. They sent wave after wave of bioships toward the capital system. Human and alien fleets engaged, but losses mounted. The swarm's Queen fleet remained massive and seemingly unkillable. Grant called his remaining strike forces. Listen carefully. We will end this now. Every ship, every crew member, you know what to do. Sacrifice is required. We cannot survive without it. We hit the Queen fleet directly. Every ship counts. The humans moved like shadows through the swarm. Smaller ships distracted enemy vessels while larger human frigates and cruisers closed in. They ignored personal safety. They fired into the heart of the Queen's ships even when escape seemed impossible. A young human pilot, barely 19, maneuvered her ship through a dense field of swarm fighters. Her engines flared bright as she released a payload of nuclear mines directly into the Queen's engine core. There was no turning back. The explosion consumed her ship, but the Queen's massive body ruptured in fire. Reyes spoke softly into the comms. They are willing to die, and they are winning. Grant nodded grimly. They always have been. The final stage of the plan unfolded. The remaining moons were detonated near the swarm's central hive fleet. The kinetic impacts, combined with human explosives, shattered the hive ships like glass. Massive explosions lit the void. Thousands of swarm fighters were annihilated instantly. Alien fleets cheered, but the humans did not. They only kept fighting. Every surviving ship fired until ammunition was gone. Every crew member acted until they had no choice but to retreat or be destroyed. By the end, nearly all human vessels had been lost. Their fleets were reduced to a handful of battered ships drifting through the debris-strewn battlefield. And then, silence. The swarm's Queen fleet was destroyed. Hive ships scattered and fled. The galaxy's greatest threat had been broken. For the first time in decades, Confederation worlds would not be consumed. The alien commanders stared at the wreckage, awe and fear in their eyes. Relvar's voice trembled as he spoke. The galaxy was saved, and it is because of them. Veyra, feathers flattened, whispered. They were willing to pay any price, and they did. Tarek's claws drummed on the table. They are terrifying, not because of strength, but because of will. No one else would survive like this. No one else would dare. On the few surviving human ships, Captain Grant looked at his crew. So many were gone. Friends, comrades, heroes, all lost in fire and sacrifice. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. There was only exhaustion, grief, and a quiet understanding of the cost of survival. Reyes approached him. We saved them. But at what price? Grant's eyes scanned the stars, dark and empty after the battles. At every price necessary, he said. We were called because no one else answered. That's what humans do. We survive. We endure. We fight when everyone else fails. That is enough. That is everything. The Confederation slowly began to understand. They had sent a call into the void, expecting aid from great empires. They had been ignored. Only humanity answered. And humanity had done what no one else could. Across the galaxy, survivors honored the humans, even as they feared them. To alien eyes, humans were both saviors and something else, a species capable of unimaginable courage and almost unimaginable ruthlessness. Relvar spoke quietly to Tarek and Veyra in the council chamber, gazing at the stars. When we called, only humanity answered, and now we know why. They were forged for this. They are survivors. And because of them, so are we. Tarek rumbled in agreement. Yes, but their way is not ours. They are something different. Something extraordinary. Veyra nodded, feathers softening. We owe them everything, and we must remember what they taught us. Survival is not about fleets or weapons. It is about courage, will, and the willingness to face death itself. The dear remnants of the human fleet limped toward the nearest friendly system. Many ships would never make it back. Many crews would never see home. But their work had saved billions. Planets were safe, civilizations survived, and the Velcro swarm had been broken. Captain Grant looked at his officers, their faces drawn and tired, yet burning with the same quiet determination he had seen in every human for centuries. "We did what had to be done," he said. "We fought when no one else would, and the galaxy lives because of it. That is all that matters." Reyes nodded. "They will never forget us." "No," Grant said softly, "and we will never forget them. Every life lost, every sacrifice, it is what makes us human." Across the galaxy, alien historians would write of the final battle. They would record the victories, the strategies, the terrible cost. But above all, they would remember the humans, a small, fragile species who had faced the impossible, risked everything, and answered a call when no one else would. And so, the stars fell silent again, not with death, but with hope. Humanity had saved a galaxy that had doubted them, had faced extinction alongside it, and had proven what all intelligent life must learn. When the odds are hopeless, when darkness seems endless, only courage, will, and determination can light the way. The galaxy had survived.